these, Daryl, my understanding is that these groups really came out of, or were a reaction to, Reconstruction. They were attempts by Southern whites to throw federal forces, the remnants of Lincoln's army, Lincoln was long dead, out of southern states and reassert local control so that they could suppress black votes. And in many of these areas, these were majority black counties. There was this brief period in the late 1860s, early 1870s where African Americans were actually getting elected to public office in places like the Carolinas and Georgia. And this was, you know, what became the Posse Comitatus law and then the Posse Comitatus movement. But this was all pushback against this. Do I have this right?
Well, your story doesn't go back far enough. I mean, according to the militia, they go all the way back to the Revolutionary War and align themselves with the Minutemen that fought the British invasion. But for the modern-day militia, we have to go back to August of 1992 to the Ruby Ridge standoff out in Idaho. Soon after that standoff ended, with the death of a couple U.S. Marshals and the death of Randy Weaver's wife and also his son, we had a Christian identity racist minister out of Colorado by the name of Pete Peters who assembled 160 extremists together at a YMCA camp out in Estes Park, Colorado, and this became known as the Rocky Mountain Rendezvous. And at this event, they discussed what is our response going to be for the next event that happens where the government comes in and, you know, has a standoff with what they perceived as a Christian family. This heavy hand of the government being used against this family. And so one of the speakers, John Trockman, who was also a Christian identity member from Montana, gave a speech about how they needed to form citizen armies to repel the tyranny of the federal government. And so this thought was first introduced at that Rocky Mountain Rendezvous in 1992, and then 5-6 months later we had the Waco standoff, which was kind of the catalyst that set this whole thing into motion. And by 1994 we saw the first two modern-day militia groups surface in Michigan and Montana. Now there were two distinct differences between these militia groups. The one in Montana, run by John Trockman and his family, was more of a mail-order militia, okay, kind of a publisher's clearinghouse of how to start your own militia, how to arm it and train it. But in Michigan, this was a true paramilitary organization that structured itself much like the military, conducted paramilitary training, had thousands of members that were doing this and dressing in military uniforms and ranks. So that's kind of the origins of today's modern-day militia movement.
Yeah, and John, you've written about these folks?